Hello everyone, this is Recursive Gaming, and today we are going to discuss stats. We'll start with the top 3 most neglected stats, then we'll cover how to move stats around within your gear to make up for bad rolls. Which is important because, let's be honest, we rarely get the stats to roll on gear exactly the way we need it to, so knowing how to move stats around in your gear can help make the difference. Then, we'll discuss how to identify what type of character build to go for, which will influence your choices of costume sets, battle badges, and Omega cards. And last, I'll show you which stats to prioritize building first. If you're looking to get the most out of your stats, watch this guide. I'll be sure to explain everything you need to know. Accuracy rate is one of the most important stats, and yet one of the most neglected, because it's not a noticeable difference until you reach endgame. A large portion of Marvel Future Revolution's gameplay includes PvP, and as I'm sure most of you are aware, Spider-Man with all that dodge is extremely difficult to hit. However, big tip here, Spider-Man isn't the only person building dodge. Trust me, if you don't build accuracy, you won't go very far in PvP. However, let's say you don't care about PvP. Well, accuracy still helps in PvE a lot as well. You do need a certain amount of accuracy at in-game PvE, or you will notice the enemy dodging your attacks. To break down how important accuracy rate really is, let's assume that without building any accuracy rate, in PvE against level 100 bosses, you miss about 20% of the time. Basically, reduce your total damage by 20%. All of the rest of your offensive stats that you've put so much effort into building, such as crit rate, crit damage, attack, defense pierce, etc., just basically reduce them all by 20%. And that's the actual amount of damage you're putting out because you're missing 20% of the time. So, build accuracy at least about 20%. Dodge rate is the second most neglected stat because people who aren't Spider-Man assume that only Spider-Man is building dodge, and because people who don't play in PvP assume you only need it for PvP. However, dodge rate helps a lot in PvE as well. Many times I have managed to solo very difficult bosses because I got lucky, where I would normally have died because I was out of dodges and iframes, and the boss missed his big hit that would have killed me because of my dodge rating. So basically you only notice how important dodge rating is in PvE when you start doing the very difficult content, and dodging one hit from the boss is the difference between winning or losing. Dodge rate only needs to help you once or twice in a high-level boss fight for it to be worth building. And truthfully, once your dodge rate is high enough, you can feel safe autoing a lot more content because you know you'll be able to dodge enough hits for your healing potions to keep up. Everyone knows that critical rate is important, right? Why did I bother including it in this list, saying that it's the third most neglected stat? Well, let me explain. Basically, it has to do with scaling stats and the maximum stat rolls available on gear. Let's take a look at my 2 5-star chest piece costumes here. The auto-equip feature says that this piece is better, because certain stats automatically roll higher and the system gives it a higher power rate or power evaluation based on the number differences between the two stats, without considering the importance of the stats involved. The auto-equip feature will tell you to equip something that has a lot of guard damage, for instance, even though your lower level equipment may have crit rate, dodge rate, or even accuracy, if the numbers are lower. I happen to know that the slight difference in overall stats with my character's power level won't make nearly as big a difference as this accuracy stat will. I desperately need this accuracy, and it will make a much bigger difference than the power level rating shows. The same thing happens with red cores in red core slots. As you can see here, I've got a 3-star critical rate core and a 4-star attack core. The system tells me this needs an upgrade, and it wants me to equip this attack, but I can tell you 100% this critical rate is much better for my build. Also, let's take a look at some Omega cards. Everyone's favorite card in the game. Critical damage. At 6-star, it will have 28.7% critical damage. As you can see here, crit damage rolls naturally much higher than attack. Let's see, this one has attack 7.2. Wow. 21.5% higher roll on critical damage naturally than attack. So it rolls higher. Critical damage rolls higher than any other stat in the game on every piece of gear in the game. Costumes, Omega cards, battle badges, and yes, even in your specialization tree and your potential. No other stat rolls as high as crit damage, and yet the game prioritizes attack percentage over crit damage every time. Even though, as you can see here, the attack percentage is so much lower than the crit damage. So why doesn't the game's auto-equip seem to like crit damage? Now, it could be because my game's crit chance is too low, but I don't think the game is that smart. I don't expect the game to suddenly start recommending crit damage more than attack percentage once my crit rate is higher. I think that the devs designed the auto-equip this way because most players won't take the time to build crit rate as high as it needs to be in order to take full advantage of the crit damage stat, and therefore it thinks that building attack percentage is better for most players. And it's right. But not for us. Because after this video, you're all going to build crit rating, and crit damage will have a much more massive impact than attack percentage, because crit damage naturally rolls 3 times or even 5 times higher. So let's do a little math to show how crit damage is not a worthwhile stat until your crit rating is high enough. Take your crit damage, now multiply it by your crit chance with the decimal point moved in front of the critical rate number. That result is how much your critical damage is actually increasing your overall DPS. As you can see, crit damage becomes drastically more effective the more crit rate you have. However, if your crit rate is too low, crit damage is a wasted stat. So, in summary, the auto-equip system will not focus building your crit rate because it thinks attack and other stats are more important. However, when you consider how much higher the crit damage stat rolls on all of your gear more than any other stat, it becomes obvious that, with enough crit rating, crit damage becomes your best damage multiplier. Okay, so I know that you can't actually move stats around on gear all that much. You can really only do it with cores in your battle badges, but you're forgetting one thing. Bonus stats on gear change when you upgrade that gear. The process of build-up that you go through as you are upgrading your costumes and your Omega cards is so important, and it's actually misunderstood by most players. It's normal to assume that when you upgrade gear, it gets better. But in this game, it can actually get worse. This is the primary reason why non-regional costume sets are better than regional costume sets unless you're an extreme whale. Because regional costumes are very difficult to get copies of, so you are much more limited in how much optimization of substat rolls you can do. Gear that has been carefully crafted, from low rarity all the way to the top rarity, compared and replaced with the same type of gear that has rolled slightly better substats, will result in an overall much better built character than a person who just went with whatever bonus substats they got and kept after their first upgrade, instead of comparing it with the same gear and replacing it with whatever bonus stats they got that were better. Each step of the upgrading process. To be the most effective with your stats, keep duplicates of your costumes so you can upgrade them as your fodder and maybe get a more optimal result. For instance, let's take a look at our Omega cards. My Omega cards. Also, be cautious when deciding which Omega cards to upgrade if it would mean getting rid of substats that rolled well. Because after you upgrade the Omega card, the new substats might be terrible. Air to surface damage is one of the worst stats in the game. So this card, when I upgraded it, actually got worse. The reason I upgraded it was to increase the 2-set dodge rating. It's better, in some situations, to keep a slightly weaker card that has better substats. This issue can be even more complicated, such as in this situation, when you consider the set bonuses when you have a complete set of Omega cards. The set bonuses increase as the Omega cards are upgraded. In this rare case, it might be more worth the risk of losing great substats because of a card upgrade. So this is one worthless stat, Thankfully, it still rolled a decent bonus stat here with Defense Pierce. I've been talking about optimizing your gear, but what about if your gear rolls badly? Well, first, don't freak out. It's possible to fix that mistake if you have a lower rarity of the same piece of gear, and you can try the upgrade again. Also, if gear rolls badly, you can make up for it by switching your gear focus. For instance, until you have enough crit rating, don't put crit damage green cores in your battle badges. Use defense pierce green cores instead. However, once you have enough critical rating, transition to crit damage green cores. For another example, let's say your costume chest piece rolls full crit damage and attack with no crit chance. Just use all crit chance in your red cores. So it is actually possible to make up for bad rolls on costumes in other places and somewhat fix the issue with your battle badges and deciding to upgrade to the next level of rarity, let's say in your Omega cards, and get new substat rolls. First, let me say thank you for sticking with me this far into the video. I know it's good information, but it's also a lot of information, and most people have probably checked out by now, so thank you for sticking with me. Now then, I'll quickly show you how to identify what your character build should be. But certain characters are good at certain things. This doesn't mean you can't build a character like Star-Lord as pure damage. It just means Star-Lord will get more out of a damage build and focusing those stats if he is using his fire abilities. His frost and lightning specs are focused around status effects, while his fire is focused around doing more damage. This is obvious when you look at the skills. However, it's a little more complicated than that in some cases. For instance, Spider-Man has an active trait that allows him to get more damage based on his dodge rate. He also has a few more active traits that help to boost his damage. The rest of his kit, however, is focused on status effect accuracy, because a lot of his abilities debuff the enemy with webs. And once that reaches full stack, the enemy is cocooned, and it's basically game over from there. Does this mean Spider-Man should build only dodge and status effect accuracy and not damage? No, in fact, Spider-Man has plenty of abilities that have decent damage modifiers, so he can build dodge and damage instead, and completely ignore status effect accuracy if he wants. It breaks down like this. You can't build every stat to full cap. There's not enough gear pieces for that to be possible, so you have to choose between damage or status effect accuracy. This is because maxing your crit rate and crit damage requires so much focus that there's very little room left over for other stats, and you need accuracy and dodge rating, so how are you supposed to get status effect accuracy as well? You can't. It's impossible. A character that focuses purely on crit chance, crit damage, and attack will do more damage than a character that has to focus on status effect accuracy. This is why it's important to identify what your character is good at. A Spider-Man who cocoons the enemy will win in PvP, arguably just as often, if not more often, than a Spider-Man who builds for pure damage. Cocoon is an extremely strong control status effect. In Spider-Man's case, foregoing some damage stats in favor of status effect accuracy makes sense, especially if he is using his web abilities and stacking that cocoon effect. So let me use my Iron Man here as a specific visual example to make this as clear as possible. Here in my skills, I have multiple skills with massively high damage modifiers. These are some of the highest damage modifiers of every skill in the entire game. Spider-Man wishes he had skills with damage modifiers this high. Like me, you can go into your skills and see how high your damage modifiers are. Based on which ability I choose, these damage modifiers change. So you have to take a look at your skills and see where your focus is going to be. Also, as Iron Man, I only have a few abilities that apply status effects, such as this, that lands a 2.9 second stun. And down here, this, that removes attacked enemy buffs and decreases movement speed. And this, even though it doesn't say so, the suits that come out land burn and defense break, as well as here. an incendiary bomb that lands flame damage and a debuff that increases damage received. And there's another one here. Does the same thing. Lands flame damage that increases damage received. All these require status effect accuracy in order to be effective. But Iron Man doesn't build status effect accuracy in his kit naturally. If you don't roll it on gear, he just won't land these debuffs most of the time. So I come into my potential. Here we go. Somewhere. Enhanced potential. And identify that I have a lot of increases to crit rate. Here's crit damage. I maxed out my crit rate finally. And almost maxed out crit rate here. And here's more critical damage. Nowhere do I have status effect accuracy. I have accuracy rate, but that's not the same as status effect accuracy. So I've identified that I have bonuses to accuracy, crit rate, and crit damage, and nothing to status effect accuracy. Literally nothing. The potential choices I have are telling me that Iron Man is not focused on landing status effects. Finally, I can come into my specialization tree, and here I will find only one active trait. Out of every active trait in my entire entire specialization tree that enhances the duration of status effects by 40%. However, none of my active traits increase the status effect accuracy. So this only comes into effect when I manage to land a status effect. And as we've already seen, I only have a couple of abilities that land status effects already, and they're not even that strong. So Iron Man's kit does not revolve around status effect accuracy. I don't even know why this active trait is in his specialization tree. I don't think any Iron Men are ever going to use this active trait. It just doesn't work well with his kit. So it's kind of a bad active trait for his specialization tree. You can do the same thing. You can go into your skills, you can go into your potential, and you can go into your specialization tree, and you can identify how much of your abilities and your potential and your specializations and your active traits, how many of those things rely on status effect accuracy, and how much your damage is being boosted. There are hybrid characters, such as Star-Lord, that can do both. Okay, but you're going to get more return on investment in your stats and deciding what stats to build in your gear if you focus more on one than the other. When you try to do everything at once, it doesn't work as well. Let's assume that you sacrifice some of your crit rate for status effect accuracy. If you do that, your crit rate will be too low to take full advantage of your crit damage stat. So I actually recommend, if you're going to build status effect accuracy, don't build crit rate and crit damage. Instead, build attack and defense pierce. So you'll be doing more consistent damage, not relying on critical. Okay, finally, here it is. This is my promised damage build stat priority guide. You'll see it on the screen. And as you can see, I'm recommending accuracy up until a certain point, then crit rate, then crit damage, dodge rate, then attack, then total damage, then defense pierce, then either PvP or supervillain damage increase and decrease depending on what your focus is going to be, either PvP or PvE. Both of these stats work well because they are overall percentage modifiers, which are excellent buffs, very effective. And then stamina recovery, which is very important. You might even prioritize stamina recovery more than, say, defense pierce and total damage. Stamina recovery might be so important for your character build because you're using high stamina abilities with low cooldowns, and you run out of stamina all the time. Stamina recovery might be very important for your kit, so keep that in mind. These numbers and these priorities will change slightly, okay, based on your ability kit for your specific character. However, the top 5 or 6 never change. Accuracy up to a certain cap, then crit rate, crit damage, dodge rate, and attack. Those will stay the same if you're trying to go for damage. Then you've got, at number 10, cooldown decrease. And then you've got max damage rate, HP, defense, guard damage decrease, ultimate gauge recovery, status effect resistance, guard damage increase, status effect accuracy, and then towards the bottom, HP recovery, villain damage increase and decrease, and then air to surface and surface to air damage increase. So keep in mind that if you want to focus more on PvP, status effect resistance is extremely important. You might want to focus on status effect resistance in PvP much higher than, say, damage. So for instance, it would be accuracy, crit rate, crit damage, dodge rate, attack, and then in the number 6 slot, you would go for a status effect accuracy. Right? Or not status effect accuracy, sorry, that's for a different build. You would go for a status effect resistance. Because in PvP, once Spider-Man gets that cocoon, you're pretty much dead. Right? So it doesn't matter how strong your character is, how much damage you do. If you're cocooned, you're not doing nothing, and he's just going to kill you. There's really nothing you can do. So you need status effect resistance in PvP. Or you're going to hit a wall, or every now and then you're going to go against a character that you just have no chance of beating. Because, you know, he's going to land the cocoon and then you're gone. So keep in mind, based on your focus, these stats will change a little bit. And those stats that change revolve around PvP damage increase and decrease, status effect resistance, status effect accuracy, and so on. So I hope this helped everyone out. And I had a lot of fun making this video. I really enjoy sharing what I figured out about the game. I love crunching numbers and figuring things out. So hit me up in the game. My character name, I don't know, does it show it here? No. Where do you even see your name? I should have looked that up first. Is it here? Here we go. Okay. So I'm in the whale pod, along with another famous YouTuber you might be watching his videos of. And then my character name is Recursive G. So if you're playing and you see Recursive G running around, that's me. So anyways, hit me up. I'd love to help you out with some content, do some raids together, do some of the harder content. I love helping out Alliance members and anyone else I meet. So once again, thank you for watching the video. Hit me up in the game, and I'd be glad to help you out. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.